Today we begin an important historical and genealogical series exploring the Danube Swabians, one of the most misunderstood and overlooked German populations in European history. Despite the name, the Danube Swabians were not simply Swabians from one region of Germany. They were a diverse collection of German-speaking settlers recruited from across the Holy Roman Empire and later settled throughout the Habsburg frontier territories of Southeastern Europe. Their story involves war, migration, colonization, religious identity, ethnic conflict, frontier survival, and ultimately displacement after the Second World War. For genealogists, historians, and descendants alike, understanding the Danube Swabians helps explain how millions of German-speaking families spread into Hungary, Serbia, Romania, Croatia, and beyond. This episode lays the foundation for everything that follows in the series. One of the biggest misconceptions about the Danube Swabians is the name itself. The term Danube Swabian, or Danube Swabians, suggests that these settlers all came from the Swabian region of Germany. That is not true. While some settlers did originate from Swabia, many others came from Bavaria, the Rhineland, Alsace, the Palatinate, Luxembourg, Austria, Lorraine, and various smaller German-speaking territories. The label became more of a cultural umbrella term over time rather than an accurate regional description. In many cases, the settlers themselves identified more strongly with their village, their religion, their dialect, or their local homeland, rather than with a broad ethnic identity. The modern term Danube Swabian largely developed later as historians and ethnic German communities attempted to unify these frontier populations under a single identity. To understand why the Danube Swabians existed at all, we must first understand the condition of Southeastern Europe after the Ottoman Wars. For centuries, the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg Empire fought over control of frontier territories in Hungary, the Balkans, Croatia, Serbia, and surrounding regions. The wars devastated enormous areas, entire villages disappeared, agricultural systems collapsed, disease, famine, military raids, and depopulation left large stretches of land nearly empty. When the Habsburgs regained major territories from the Ottomans during the late 17th and early 18th centuries, they faced a major problem. They now controlled vast frontier lands that needed farmers, craftsmen, soldiers, laborers, and loyal Catholic populations. This set the stage for one of Europe's largest organized settlement movements. The Habsburg monarchy launched organized colonization campaigns to rebuild and secure the newly reclaimed territories. The empire actively recruited German-speaking settlers because they were viewed as hard-working agriculturalists, skilled craftsmen, tax contributors, and politically reliable Catholics. Settlers were promised incentives such as free land, reduced taxes, religious protections, building materials, livestock, and transportation assistance. Several major waves of migration occurred, especially under rulers like Charles VI, Maria Theresa, and Joseph II. These settlement programs transformed the demographic structure of entire regions. Villages were carefully planned and often built according to organized imperial layouts. Some settlements became overwhelmingly German-speaking, while others developed into mixed frontier communities. The Danube River became the great migration highway of Central Europe. Many settlers traveled in wooden boats called Schachteln. These simple river vessels carried entire families deep into frontier territories far from their original homes. The journey itself was often dangerous. Migrants faced disease, flooding, poor sanitation, starvation, and uncertainty about what awaited them. For many families, this migration represented a permanent break from their ancestral homeland. Once they arrived, settlers were distributed into frontier villages across regions such as the Banat, Bačka, Slavonia, Siomia, and parts of modern Romania and Serbia. Over generations, these communities developed their own unique frontier identity. The Danube frontier was never ethnically simple. Although German-speaking settlers became important populations in many areas, they existed alongside numerous other ethnic and religious groups. The region included Orthodox Christians, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, and many linguistic communities. Daily life often involved cultural blending, cooperation, and tension simultaneously. Different communities traded together, farmed nearby lands, intermarried in some cases, and adapted to frontier realities together. At the same time, Ethnic divisions and political rivalries remained powerful. Understanding this multicultural environment is critical because modern nationalist narratives often oversimplify the region's history. The Danube Swabians were one thread within a much larger frontier tapestry. Religion played a central role in Habsburg colonization policy. The Habsburg monarchy strongly identified with Catholicism and often viewed settlement as a way to reinforce Catholic influence in contested territories. Many settlers were Catholic Germans, although Protestant communities existed as well. Churches quickly became the center of village life. Religious institutions shaped education, marriage records, community identity, social customs, and local governance. For genealogists, this is especially important because church records are often the single most valuable source for tracing Danube Swabian ancestry. Baptisms, marriages, burials, confirmations, and parish censuses can preserve family histories going back centuries. Even after major Ottoman defeats, the frontier remained unstable for generations. Some settlement regions bordered active military zones known as the military frontier. Life there could be harsh and unpredictable. Settlers often lived under military oversight, special legal systems, and defensive obligations. The frontier mentality shaped the culture deeply. Communities valued discipline, hard work, self-reliance, religious cohesion, and survival. This environment also contributed to the development of strong village identities that persisted for centuries. Many descendants today still maintain cultural traditions tied directly to this frontier experience. Over generations, these frontier communities evolved into something distinct. Although settlers came from different German-speaking regions originally, life along the Danube frontier gradually blended these populations together. New regional dialects emerged, village customs evolved, architecture adapted to the local climate and geography. Food traditions mixed German, Hungarian, Balkan, and Austrian influences. Eventually, many communities began to see themselves as part of a broader Danube Swabian identity. This identity was shaped not only by German heritage, but by centuries of frontier life in Southeastern Europe. The Danube Swabians were not simply one people from one place. They were frontier settlers shaped by empire, migration, war, religion, and survival. Their communities existed in a constantly changing borderland where identities evolved over centuries. Understanding their story requires nuance and historical context rather than simplistic labels. In future episodes, we will explore daily village life, cultural traditions, genealogical research methods, World War II, expulsions, refugee experiences, and the global diaspora of Danube Swabian descendants. The Danube Swabians were not simply one people from one place. They were frontier settlers shaped by empire, migration, war, religion, and survival. Their communities existed in a constantly changing borderland where identities evolved over centuries. Understanding their story requires nuance and historical context rather than simplistic labels. In future episodes, we will explore daily village life, cultural traditions, genealogical research methods, World War II, expulsions, refugee experiences, and the global diaspora of Danube Swabian descendants. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 1 of this Danube Swabian history series. This is a deeply important subject, not only for descendants, but for anyone interested in European history, migration, genealogy, identity, and historical memory. In future episodes, we'll continue exploring Danube Swabian culture, village structure, religion, genealogical records, World War II experiences, post-war expulsions, diaspora communities, and modern DNA connections. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, subscribe, follow, and share.